everybody. Welcome. And Fred, it's a pleasure to welcome you. I guess we'll just get into it. Fred, you started off. You were born in Cleveland, Ohio, as I understand, and born and raised in Cleveland. And you started off music at a very early age. How did you get into playing polka music? Was there someone in your family that was a musician or played an instrument? And tell us how you got started.
It's kind of hard to explain because though my mother and father liked music, neither one were a musician. My father was actually very well known in the German community in Cleveland as a bartender, and he ran one of the clubs for many years. I must have, in the later 50s, growing up, there were TV shows in the Cleveland area that featured the great polka bands, Kenny Bass, Johnny Pecan, Polka Varieties, which featured a different band every week. And I seemed to take a liking to watching these shows. And the way I sort of remember this in the fog of my mind is, Christmas time, they would bring toy instruments and I'd figure out how to get something out of it. So my father was a good friend of one of the bands in the Cleveland area that played the German clubs, that he also taught accordion lessons. Well, I was 5 years old, and his name was Jack Sadlon, not Sedlon like the accordion method, but Sadlon. And he more or less told my dad, there's no way this is going to work, but just because you're my friend, we'll try it for a month and see how it goes. And I took lessons from Jack from age about 5 to 14. And the funny thing was I could read music before I could read English, because at that time you didn't have kids going to preschool and learning to read and do everything with computers. That I forgot who I was talking to the other day. They have a 3-year-old who can count to 30. When we were kids, that just kind of didn't happen yet. So and the other funny thing that I kind of remember was when in kindergarten, whenever somebody had a birthday, I was the one who would go to the piano and play happy birthday. So anyway, I took accordion lessons from, like I said, accordion lessons from the age of 5. So I get to, elementary school, and they have a band, and maybe it was fortuitous that I took let's try the clarinet. And so in the 4th grade, I started playing the clarinet in the elementary school band. The next logical instrument was the tenor sax, which came in about the 8th grade. And of all strange things, here comes the button box, which somebody lent me my senior year in high school, and I figured it out. And that was very, probably important, because there's something unique about the button box. And at that time in the early 70s, in the Cleveland polka scene, the button box had made quite a revival. So just, every band, somebody had to play the button box. So did that kind of take care of what you were looking for?
Absolutely. And so you hit on something. So you played the accordion, you play clarinet, you play sax,
right,
and button box. So anybody that's ever seen you play knows you're very well versed in all of them, and probably even more than that. So what's your favorite instrument to play, and why?
Okay, tough one to answer. Obviously, with the accordion, you can play just about anything, and you can take it anywhere. And it's an extremely versatile instrument that sadly has had, jokes and abuse and everything. But and maybe I've been fortunate that I've worked with and known some, outstanding accordion players, so I understand the total functionality. And as I get older, I think my body is tired of playing the accordion, to be perfectly honest. And I've enjoyed the last couple of years getting called again to play clarinet and sax and fill in with bands, and I've been doing that more. I don't know that I was afraid you might even ask me if I had a favorite polka style, which, given the whole shtick of my band is to play all the polka styles, I don't know that I have. I mean, I have favorite bands in every style. Favorite musicians, guys I look up to, but I don't know that I necessarily have a favorite.
So going back, so you did all of this. You learned all these instruments and stuff before you left high school, right? And
Yeah,
then,
but I really did take lessons, and I have to say, uh, the music teachers I had, besides being fine players themselves, between being able to play an instrument and being able to teach it. And I was fortunate that I had really good teachers, both on the instruments and in my, high school band director, that sort of thing. I was in a very musical situation.
so you after high school, you went to Indiana University,
Right.
and from it,
But,
what while you were at at IU, why
yeah.
did you pursue polka music as opposed to any
And-
other genre?
okay, so I did play in the high school jazz band. Uh, I I often tell the story that the most, I don't want to say the best class I ever took at IU, but the class that I got the most out of was actually jazz arranging. But because it taught me like how instruments were going to work together, how chords work together. Because I have been accused, and musicians will appreciate this comment, I've been accused of over harmonizing some traditional songs that don't need to be. But I had a stint in the '80s where I actually played on cruise ships, so I've played other kinds of music. But I guess my head was always, you know, uh, I wanted to know what the latest polka recordings were. The guys would always kid me. Chris, you'll appreciate this. Driving through Western Pennsylvania on a Sunday afternoon, you could find two, three, four polka shows, or a Slovenian program, a Ukrainian program going on, a Croatian program going on at the same time. So wherever we would drive, I would find a polka show on the radio. And other than it must be part of my interior makeup, that's all I can, Okay, let me give you one other thing, because people have asked me when I got involved with the National Cleveland Style Polka Hall of Fame. And at that point, I was the first non-Slovenian that was elected as a trustee in the early 90s. And people ask me, well, how did you, to me, this goes back to the TV shows. The guys that played the Slovenian polkas in Cleveland were fun. They were active on stage. And I hate to say this, until I heard, and I was maybe 12 at the time, until I heard the first Hank Haller recording, which if anybody wants to go look through their vinyl, it's called Polkas and Beer. Until I heard that recording, I didn't like the German bands in Cleveland. To me, they were old men who sat down and were boring and didn't play anything I liked. And here comes Hank with his singing in German, and then he'd either play a really cool Slovenian style second part, or a former Rainbow Jillick musician, Dave Gorski, played clarinet in the band at that point. He would Belichick, and Gorski would play some wild clarinet thing, and they'd go back to singing in German. And I thought, this is really cool. So it's like, even though a lot of my work has been through the Oktoberfest, the German clubs, it's kept me going for many, many years. As a kid, I did not like the German bands in Cleveland. So,
yeah. Do you remember what was the name of your very first recording? Now, as you left college, ISM, the International Sound Machine, was your very first band. Your first band you put together, right?
Not okay. I had a band in high school that was alternately known as the Fred Ziwich Trio or the Fred Ziwich Combo, and yes, and then in about 1973, I actually joined the Hank Haller band for several years and did one recording at that point. That's kind of a good chunk of what put me through college. But when I got out of college, I wanted to do my own thing, because I had this, do I want to call it vision? I don't want to sound too profound here. Of doing a band that could play all the polka styles. I didn't want to be pigeonholed into, oh, he's a German band. And we could go to there. I mean, I had music and arrangements, and it was kind of hard to keep musicians together for a while, but potentially we could go, almost anywhere and play in the Slovenian home, the German festivals. I still have a whole book of the Polish arrangements we played at that time. So,
So
I tend to ramble. So did I answer your question?
I was gonna say, so what was the first album you recorded as ISM?
Okay, it was called There's Polka Music in Every Heart, and we recorded in 1979. And anybody who watched the Ted and Molly show last night, I actually did the lead cut as one of the songs we did.
Which leads me to another question. So what were you've recorded on what, over 1,200 recordings across
1,200 songs. It's 1,200 songs.
1,200 songs. Okay.
Yeah.
Over multiple genres and
Right.
everything. What are some of the favorite tunes that you've played or still play or that you've recorded over the years?
Interesting. I have a kind of a, any musician who's been in this crazy business long enough has got stories. And I suppose if you listen to my Polka Jammer show enough, I tend to tell them, during the show. So this was, I think, 1981, and Cleveland still had the Brook State Inn, which was known as Cleveland's Polka Landmark, which had polka music on Thursday nights with a local band from 9 to 12, and then had either one of the more touring local bands or somebody that needed a job coming through Cleveland on Friday and Saturday night. And this was what they referred to as a bar job from 10 to 2. We played till 2 o'clock in the morning in those days. So we had played on a Friday night somewhere. Couldn't even tell you where, but we went to Brook State, and Bruno Miklos and the Harmony Stars were playing that night. And Bruno says, "Hey, do you have your clarinet? You want to come up and play a few tunes?" Sure. So I stay with him the rest of the job. And he says to me at the end, "What are you doing Sunday?" And I said, "Nothing." Why? He says, "Well, we're recording at Peppermint. You want to come and play clarinet?" And, my first reaction is, "Well, do you have any music to anything?" He says, "No, we're playing honky style." I said, "Well, that still doesn't help me, because as much as I like the Polish style, that I don't inherently know the tunes." Well, anyway, this was the album that gave us the original version of Hey Pretty Girl, because the version that Eddie B recorded in 1984 or so, which, most of the bands ever since then have played, he had his own arrangement. But I actually played on that original recording of Hey Pretty Girl. Probably another important one. Would this have been about the second or third year of the Grammys? Hank Haller's recording of Say Thank You to Her and Give Her Roses was nominated, and I actually wrote most of the arrangements and played on some of the tunes on that. And I also played second accordion on the Walter Osnick albums between 1996 and 2006. And, without making editorial comments about the Grammys and how they all turned out, all of Walter's albums every year were always nominated. So that's some of the significant ones. Plus, our own recording of What a Little Polka Can Do that we did in 2001 was the Polka Hall of Fame's recording of the year, the Cleveland Style Polka Hall of Fame. And then Tony Podkosek actually used that song as his theme song that led off his daily show for like 2 years. So our recording of What a Little Polka Can Do got an awful lot of airplay in Cleveland.
Okay. Have you been able to play? Have you played with musicians of other genres, or if you haven't, is there, just as a thought, is there somebody out there that you would like to collaborate with on something?
Oh, I don't want to collaborate, but the one thing that I would like to do, and this goes back to when I was younger, because there are, in fact, one of the last times I talked to Rick Rizutko on the phone, he was getting ready to rehearse with a big band. And I think it would be fun to sit in the saxophone section and, play those charts, whether they're the dance charts or, more of the jazz kind of things. I think I would enjoy, getting an opportunity to do that. Of course, right now it'd be kind of hard to put a big band together because we'd be 6 feet apart.
That's one big stage.
Yeah, there you are.
Which that actually leads me to another question is, okay, what is the largest stage that you've ever played on, or the biggest event that you've ever played, and What do you remember most about it?
There's a couple that come to mind. Part of the reason that you may not have seen me often on Labor Day weekend at the IPA conventions is because Labor Day weekend is also the largest Oktoberfest in Cleveland.
Mm-hmm.
And that has two huge tents, and, you know, big stage. You can get two bands. That's one. The stage in Frankenmuth, which is generally set up for the Summer Music Fest, and then they leave it up for the Oktoberfest. That's another big one. One that comes to my mind, back to the 80s, I got to play with Don Lipovac a couple times at Iron World in Minnesota. And I remember one of the better, because I don't like to have my picture taken. I always don't like the way I look. The hardest part of a recording for me is the picture on the cover. So anyway, to the point, one of the local papers took a picture of, I was playing a clarinet with Don on the accordion, and the stage was up and they were on the ground and was looking up and this huge amphitheater. So that's one that comes to my mind that was kind of rememberable.
Okay. So along those lines, like what is you've traveled all over. What's your favorite area that you play or that you continue to play?
You know, I don't know that I necessarily have a favorite. I could tell you that I figured out at one point that I've played at one time or another in 28 states. Now I don't know if that's a lot or not, and I could because I've been able to play with different styles of bands along the way. I one slight right turn here. One of my philosophies of music is that there's no such thing as a bad song. There are questionable renditions of songs, but there's no such thing as a bad song. So, and I forgot what your question was, but I know it applied there.
So what would let's talk about younger musicians and that are just starting off in polka music and stuff. What advice would you have for them?
Okay, the one thing that I was kind of known for was the ability to imitate whatever band we're trying to play. And since I got to work with like Joe Fedorchak, since we, Hank Haller, Walter Ostanek, most guys that could play kind of Slovenian accordion, Frankie Yankovic's an easy one. My point is, these guys were all before me. And I mean, there's not a huge number of fans, even in, my general age demographic. I would say find a way to play to your age. In other words, if you're going to play polkas, if you have to play, if you have to play them with some kind of upbeat, crazy style or come up with novelty songs, I'm not sure how much foreign vocals are going to be popular anymore, but the whole thing that a band today would have to do is figure out how to, like there's several young guys in the Cleveland area. Aaron Dusing is one, Anthony Solkar is one, and to Anthony's point, when there have been a couple of times over the last couple of years where I was not able to make a job, he played it for me. So even though I lost track, I don't think he's 30 yet, he's 27 or 28. He's absorbed a lot, but he's playing to mine or our crowd. And if he wants to be playing in a couple of years, a young band has to figure out how to appeal to their age.
Yep, absolutely. What do you think sets you apart from other artists in the polka music field? What do you think gives you that your difference as opposed to everybody else?
My standard line is I never went away. I don't know. It's perhaps because I do appreciate all the styles. I obviously didn't grow up around Dutchman music. But a couple months ago, for doing the Ted and Molly show, I think in November, Molly got the bright idea, can we do something with two clarinets? And I said, well, knowing that it's not one of her strongest instruments, what do you have in mind? And she sent over a couple hula-rai tunes. Now, I'm not at all familiar with hula-rai, but the versions she sent were really good. And so we actually did a couple things with two clarinets on the show that were more in the, the German Dutchman style. So I think every style, if you find the right group, the right representative of the group, which if I may, I'm very pleased that the IPA, Steve Meisner and Klanik and Friends are going to represent the more Slovenian style in an extremely great way, and I'm real pleased to know that they're going to be at the convention in September.
Yeah. When we had Steve out with the virtual festival in September, right off on a Friday night, that was he was a huge hit, absolutely a huge hit. Tell us, we're going to kind of like wrap things up here shortly, but
okay.
Tell us your wackiest band story that you've got.
Oh my. I probably should have thought this one out first. Was this in your list of questions? God, I don't know that I,
or what's your most memorable stuff?
Okay. So not necessarily with the ISM, but if you're going to just go with me as a memorable, I have been on stage with Myron Florin. In fact, Myron Florin and Dick Contino, the Dick Contino experience, the year after Frankie Yankovic died, Dick Contino was in the Cleveland area to do 2 days worth of shows, and the promoter hired Walter Osenik to put a band together to play Frankie Yankovic songs, kind of in memory of Frankie Yankovic. So after Dick Contino did his show, he wanted to play a couple polkas together, and for some reason it came up, let's do the clarinet polka. And typical Las Vegas show, this is a clarinet polka at a rip-roaring tempo that there I can tell you I could not keep up on the accordion, and I said, can I play the clarinet with you? So I have a picture of me playing the clarinet polka with Dick Contino, and for this goes back to about 1993 with Myron Florin. I was part of the backup band, Myron Florin's backup band at some shows he did at I want to say the Bavarian Inn. It was in Frankenmuth, and it's got to be the Bavarian Inn because that's usually where I worked. So I was pleased to be affiliated with two of the world's greatest accordion players, even if it was only for that moment.
Nice. And I think, well, at least one of the last questions I have is, where do you see in the next 5 to 10 years?
Tough one, because we had a Hofbrauhaus open here in Cleveland in 2014, and my band for the better part of the first year and a half was the early band on Saturday, and it was always packed. And what we found out was the songs that got the most applause were the polkas that everybody knew. In Heaven There Is No Bear, She's Too Fat for Me, Who Stole the Kishka, Roll Out the Barrel. Plus the whole mentality of the Hofbrauhaus, where you don't have a dance floor. People have to get up on the bench to do whatever they're going to do. So, we had to play the chicken dance a couple times a night. I think that the only way this is going to work, I don't see this. People don't dance anymore, even at your big festivals. I mean, people are able to dance, I would think, but it's a curious thing where, the Polish festivals, the people stand in front of the band. So the dance floor is kind of shrunk. And that's okay. That's part of the culture. I get that. But where do I think it's going? It may only be on what I want to say. I don't want to use the word limited and make it sound negative, but it may only be a festival thing. But it's got to be where, again, the bands kind of cater to the age of the people that's there. I used to say my band, we played the music for a generation older than us, because we could, play a lot of the non-polka stuff that age liked also. And obviously, when the Opera House opened, suddenly we were the oldest guys in the room, and it was like way different than what we had experienced for many years. I hope that bands out there realize that how it's not even so much. It is what they play, but it's how they play it and how they. Maybe you need a rock and roll fuzz guitar, just some kind of thing to catch everybody's attention, along with the accordion.
Yeah. Last question for me is,
okay,
what do you consider your greatest achievements in polka music?
You're going to laugh at this, but the first thing that came to my mind is that I'm still able to do it. It is an honor to have been elected to both Polka Hall of Fames. When I was elected to the Cleveland Style in 2010, I was actually the youngest person to have been inducted at that point. And then, curiously, Steve Meisner was inducted the next year. But the fact that I'm still able to do it, there's still enough of a, do I want to call it a burn and interest in going out and playing. I got to admit, I'm a little bit concerned when they sound the all clear and we're allowed to go out and play again. How are we going to react to it? Are we going to be like physically out of shape? Are we going to be able to play a 3 or 4 hour job? But that doesn't necessarily answer the question of, what do I consider my greatest accomplishment? I don't know. I mean, I'm glad that I can still do it. I'm glad that people still want to hear me do it. I'm pleased that, the major organization like the IPA wants to hear what I have to say. Of course, after we get done with that, they may never have bring me back. But Chrissy's smiling. That's a good thing.
No, I mean, honestly, I think it's just one of those questions that, it's more about what you feel as opposed to what, somebody else feels it is, or, it could be something like you said, small as, hey, I'm still able to do this after how many years, and regardless of the awards on the wall and things like that, this is what makes it for me.
Let me just add one other thing. The scary thing about getting to this age is, that there's probably not a huge amount of time left for me in the business. I'd like to think that there is, but say something were to go wrong with me, or I was slow down in some way. I hope I have the common sense and the wherewithal to say, okay, I can't do this anymore. I need to admit it to myself. And I had a good long run. It's time to turn it over to the young guys or somebody else. Yeah. I just hope that I have the common sense to realize that when it happens, as opposed to going out and trying to play and embarrassing myself. And what's wrong with Fred? He didn't used to sound like that. I don't want that to happen.
Yeah. Well, those are all the questions I have for you, and I don't see any questions up in my chat or anything like that. So
like what they would say at the bar, last call. If you want to send something over here.
Oh, I'm sorry, Keith. Thank you so much for conducting this interview, and Fred, thank you so much for being a part of this portion of our general meeting. We really appreciate you taking the time to answer these questions, and we thank you so much for being a part of it.
Oh, no, glad to.